Welcome back to another episode of the Draw Control podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by a fifth-year player on the Clemson women's lacrosse team who recently just graduated from the Cornell women's lacrosse team, Shannon Brazier. In her career, Shannon was a first-team All-Ivy League honoree at midfield. She totaled 20 goals and 5 assists for 25 points to go along with 48 draw controls and 20 ground balls and 10 caused turnovers last season. In high school, Shannon was on the IL Women's Top 100 Incoming Freshman list, and I'm excited to talk to her today. So thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on the podcast. And how's everything going?
Well, thank you for having me. It's going well. I just came back from school for the first time since July, so I'm happy to be home, but also eager to get back in just a few days.
Is it weird? The weather change a little bit different going from
Oh,
South Carolina to the East Coast or the New England area, I guess.
yeah, definitely. And also, like, I went to school upstate New York, which was super, super cold. And then now going to school in the South, where it's like not very cold, but I'm almost like I'm getting softer down there. Like I think something that would used to be like really warm in Ithaca is now like super cold in South Carolina. So definitely different environments.
Well, I sort of want to talk and start off this podcast talking about your recent transfer and the upcoming season. So, obviously, you couldn't use your fifth year option at Cornell because Ivy Leagues don't allow it. So, what made you end up deciding to use your extra year of eligibility, and why was Clemson sort of the school for you to do that?
Yeah, so I actually didn't think at the beginning of my senior year, I didn't think that I was going to use my last year of eligibility. I thought I was just going to kind of wrap it up and move on into the real world per se. But then as fall ball was progressing in my senior year, and I realized like, wow, like I'm going to be finishing up the sport that I played for so long. I was talking to my parents about it. I had that extra year, so they kind of convinced me, and I kind of talked through it, and I was just like, let me just throw my name into the portal, see what happens. The worst thing that can happen is I don't get any hits and I just finish up at Cornell. But then to in a great turn of events, I got some interest from a bunch of schools, and Clemson being one of them. And it's kind of interesting because when I was younger, Clemson didn't have a lacrosse program. And I remember talking to my parents when I was doing the recruiting process and just talking about colleges in general. And I remember literally saying, like, if Clemson had a lacrosse program, like, that's where I would want to go to school, but I want to play lacrosse in college. So I'm not going to go to Clemson. And so it being the second year of Clemson's lacrosse program, kind of, it almost seemed like fate. So and that's what my parents told me too. They were like, you've been talking about this for as long as you can remember. So it just kind of seemed like the natural choice to use my last year at Clemson. And the coaches just are incredible. And they made me want to come there. They're so wise and knowledgeable. So immediately wanted to go to Clemson.
And has there been any adjustment you've had to make to your game being on a new team and try to get to know everybody and learn the team systems? Because just from my research doing on Clemson, it seems like there's a lot of new players from the transfer portal and freshmen. It seems like they're really trying to make a quick turnaround for the program in its first few years, trying to be competitive in the ACC.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a lot to learn coming in. They last year was their first year, obviously, so they took a lot of transfers, and then they ended up, I think, graduating like 12 grad transfers. So therefore, they had to like take in a lot of new transfers as well, grad and undergrad, and then also a whole new freshman class of 8 players. So I think it's definitely different having to get used to so many different players, whereas on like an established team, it's mostly like the freshmen getting used to just the new players, and you progress with, I don't know, like 20 girls each year. So I think that was definitely something that we had to get used to in fall ball, just learning to play with each other, learn each other's strengths, their weaknesses, and also just coming and learning different like offensive sets, different defensive sets, different zones. Luckily, I have played at different programs, so I have like the foundations, but I needed to learn the details quicker. And I think that was the biggest difference, is just learning the different kind of sets that each that Clemson has from my previous experience.
Now, obviously, during the off season, did you do in regards to training to help prepare for this upcoming season?
Yeah, so I was in an interesting position because my grad program started in the summer. So I was lucky enough to be able to be on Clemson's campus over the summer. And so I started training there with the strength coach through optional stuff. But I knew coming into Clemson, an ACC program, they are very fast, very quick, lots of running, especially as a midfielder. So something I've been focusing on is that fitness piece, and that strength piece to go along with it. And lucky to have such a great strength coach at Clemson that like really cares and was like so interested in helping me as a transfer right away. So I've been able to work with her since July, and I think that's been super, super helpful.
How do you balance strength and cardio? Because obviously you want to be fast, but and have endurance, but you also, like you mentioned, you want to be strong. I'm curious how you sort of balance that out because I feel like if you do one of too much, it might affect the other.
Yeah, I think our strength coach does a great job of making us stronger, but not to the point where like we're throwing up like really heavy weight and getting hurt. I think she does a really good job of making sure we're getting correct form in our lifting and making sure that all of our movements are explosive because lacrosse is such an explosive sport. So really focusing in on that like form aspect when we lift, and then of course like all of the conditioning that we do, working on a lot of cuts, change of speed, change of direction. I think she has a great she has a lot of knowledge in what she's doing, so she curates our workouts to fit lacrosse very well.
What was fall ball like for your team, and what did you take away from those games you played? Because obviously, fall ball, I remember someone telling me fall ball is for the freshmen because it gets them the chance to learn the new systems and stuff, and then spring is for the seniors. But for your team, it's really for everybody since you're trying to learn everybody's sort of way of how they play and stuff like that. So just talk about this year's fall ball experience for you and what that was like.
Yeah, no, I think fall ball was great. Like you said, usually it is for the freshmen, work out your nerves and stuff, but at a certain point, like I feel like we're all kind of freshmen at Clemson, just because we're all so new and we're all working together for the first time. But we played some great competition. We played Florida, Jacksonville, Team England came down or over, and we played against them. And it was just great getting to play other competition other than yourself because it tested us. And I think like we obviously had inter team scrimmages where we were able to work against each other, but we kind of started to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses. So it was interesting to put those strengths and weaknesses to test against other teams that could play us differently or give us different looks. And I think that it was super successful in building some more team chemistry. Um, and I think we've learned some big takeaways that we're going to take into the spring and hopefully be better from.
What are your team's goals and expectations for next season? Because honestly, from just looking at it from an outside perspective, I'm not saying this because you're on the podcast. I think you guys have a real chance at being a competitive team in the ACC. What is your team's goals and expectations outside of that, obviously?
Yeah, I think that we want to prove last year Clemson made some noise in the ACC and in the lacrosse world in general, and I think that we want to prove that that wasn't just like a fluke year. It wasn't just like beginner's luck. I think we want to prove that Clemson is a program that can go far and is going to compete at the best level, and just really show that that we are here to stay and not just kind of die out. And I think we're gonna do that and succeed.
Is there anything individually you want to see yourself accomplish for your last year in college lacrosse?
Um, Honestly, this is like cliche, but at the end of the day, I don't really care about individually. I hope that like the program succeeds to the best of the ability, and with the program succeeding comes more individual recognition. So we can only be as good as our whole team is. So at the end of the day, like the team comes first, and that's what I want to see succeed. And if I can just enjoy my last year, I'm a competitive person, so hopefully do well as well. But I think just enjoying my last year and finishing out the sport that I like fell in love with as a little girl and like truly love. So yeah.
Well, I want to transition now and talk about the beginning of your lacrosse career and sort of work all the way up to the end of your final year with Cornell. So, from the research I did on yourself, it says that you're from Stony Brook, New York. What's it like growing up there, and how did you start playing lacrosse?
Yeah, so Stony Brook is on Long Island, which is a major hotbed of lacrosse. And I've pretty much played lacrosse probably as long as I can remember. I have an older brother who ended up playing college lacrosse as well, and I have a twin brother who also plays lacrosse. Um, so when my older brother, he's 6 years older than me, when I, he's been playing lacrosse since I was born, basically. So I would always go to his games. I got my own lacrosse stick in my hand. And then my dad ended up being my coach like through like Pee Wee lacrosse and stuff. Um, so yeah, I've kind of just been surrounded by lacrosse my whole life, and being a major hotbed of lacrosse, it's been super helpful because it's helped me become a better player, I would say.
I have to know if there's any sort of sibling bantering between you guys about who's the better lacrosse player and stuff. I feel like you probably have the edge on them now, I would imagine.
I think that there's a little banter for sure, but it's hard to compare against different genders of the sport. So the fighting never really gets anywhere because we both think we're right, and or all three of us think we're right. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Growing up, did you have like a favorite player or team that you like to watch?
I loved to watch Stony Brook when I was younger just because it was in my backyard. So I would go to their games a lot. And also I loved Notre Dame growing up because there was a player from my town that played for Notre Dame, and she ended up being like my coach for a little bit when I was younger. So just like kind of hometown girls that I followed, I just ended up loving their college team.
Now, before college, you played for your high school in Ward Melville. Hopefully, I pronounced that
Yes.
correctly. Talk about your high school lacrosse experience and what you took away from that.
Yeah, my high school lacrosse experience was great. I played for Ward Melville, like you said, and I think that high school lacrosse, especially at my like league level, we were conference A, which is like the bigger schools. It was great competition. So it was really challenging. I mean, a lot of the players that you see today at big schools and dominating women's lacrosse played on Long Island. I played against them, I played with them. So it's crazy to see them now on these like big screens and stuff. But it was definitely a great experience because of how challenging it was, but also I had a great group of girls that I graduated with. I think there were like 7 or 8 of us that ended up going on to play lacrosse at the college level. So I think that I was surrounded by talent on my team, but also surrounded by talent on the opposing team. So it just pushed me all the time to be better. So
What's your favorite high school lacrosse memory?
I think it would be senior day. Just because, like I said, we graduated with maybe 7 or 8 of us that went on to play in college, but we had been playing together since like first grade, so we really grew up to with each other. We played club together as well, and we really just like moved together throughout our years. So I think the culmination of us at the end of our time at high school was very sentimental and great to see everyone go and do everything that they were set out to do.
Now, you also played club lacrosse with Long Island Top Guns. Just talk about your club lacrosse experience and how do you think it helped prepare you for college lacrosse?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, a lot of the girls from my high school we played on Top Guns together, which was great because we had that chemistry that translated from not just club but high school. So we like knew each other very well. And then we were able, Top Guns was always playing great teams like M&D Black, which is a big program, Yellow Jackets, and just getting to play against different, very talented players is always the best that you can ask for to get better. But also our head coach was Shannon Smith, who a great player in her college days. And she was Torton finalist, Torton winner, and she was just amazing. And I think that her knowledge really helped me as a player um, become better at like pretty much every aspect of my game. I played like so many different positions in club. I played D at one point. I played attack and then midi, and then she also helped me with the draw. So I think her expertise as such a phenomenal player in college was super beneficial for me going into college as well.
Yeah, and it obviously seemed like looking at your statistics that you're a very versatile player. So it seems like that definitely translated from your club lacrosse experience as well.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I noticed about your bio that I thought was interesting was you played for Team China in the World Championships. How did you get that opportunity, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so that might be one of my favorite lacrosse experiences ever. But I'm half Chinese. My mother's 100% and my grandparents immigrated here from China. And basically I around the time of I was 19, maybe 18, I had just tried out for the US team as well. But unfortunately didn't make that team. But my dad was doing some research and found out that I was able to play for Team China if I like made the team, obviously. So I tried out for the team and I made it in for the U19 World Championships, which were in Canada in 2019. Had a great experience there. It was phenomenal. So I wanted to play again, and I did that for last summer, which was in Towson. And it's just been a great experience because I think it gives me a different perspective on lacrosse. It's no longer just about the competing, which of course it is, like your nation wants to do the best, but it's also about like kind of growing the game in different areas of the world and all these like different cultures, all these different nations coming together under like one love of one sport. And I think it's just like an incredible experience. Like I can't even put words to it because it just changed my whole perspective on lacrosse, I think. And it was something I needed because it really made me once again like cherish the sport, love the sport more, and like bring my love to a different level than just the whole competition aspect of it.
It also must have been really cool for your mom to see you play in that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Now let's talk about your recruiting process now. So, what was that like for yourself, and why did you end up going to Cornell? Because if I'm not mistaken, going to an Ivy League school from a recruiting standpoint is a lot different than just like an average school because there's no NILs and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I was just curious about like how that worked out for you.
Yeah, so my recruiting process started before the rule change, which is now like you have to wait till your junior year, September 1st of your junior year. So I was actually looking at colleges in eighth and ninth grade. Um, Lucky for me, I have always kind of been academically driven, and wanted to put my academics first in terms of going to college. So when I was looking at schools, I kind of knew almost immediately that I wanted to go to an Ivy League. So those were the schools that I decided to pursue. But like you said, the Ivy Leagues are different in terms of um, going there for sports. Like there's no scholarships or anything, and you do have to kind of get into that school. And there's no like signing process really, so I had to like actually get admitted into the school. But I really decided on Cornell simply because I loved the whole atmosphere of it. And I know that's such a cliche to say, but I went to a Cornell fall clinic. I remember it vividly. And Cornell, upstate New York in the fall is just beautiful. And not only was it a beautiful campus, but the academics are so great there. And at the time, Cornell was in the top 20s. I remember the Ivy Leagues, we used to be ranked pretty consistently. So it was a great combination of academics, athletics, and I knew that at the end of it, I obviously was going for lacrosse, but I would also graduate with a great degree. And I think that's what kind of was the driving force of my decision to commit there.
I only have like one Cornell memory. I'd never been to the campus, but I saw them play a game at Madison Square Garden for hockey.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
a huge UConn hockey fan for people that
Oh,
don't know me, and they blew them out 6-0. And those Cornell fans for hockey, they're really intense. They were yelling at me all games. That's sort of my
yeah.
only Cornell memory that I have. But it was fun going there, though, for sure.
Yeah, I was actually at that game.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you had a good time because I was very upset to see my team get blown out. But
Yeah, I'm
it was
sorry.
fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
Now, what was sort of like the biggest adjustment you had to make to college lacrosse?
Hmm. So I think that the biggest adjustment I had to make was understanding that I can't be good just based off like sheer talent. I think a lot of kids kind of go through this, but when you're younger and you're getting recruited and you commit to schools, like a lot of times it's because you're just like talented and you don't have to try as hard. You're just one of those talented players, I think. But when I got to college, I realized that it wasn't talent alone that was going to carry me and help me play and help me be a better player. I had to actually like put my head down and do the work that needed to be done. I had to go in and do extra conditioning, extra lifts and stuff to make myself stronger, faster, and better. Because in high school, a lot of the times you can get away with just being athletic and being talented. And at the college level, that's not true. You have to actually work hard as well. And I think that was what I had to adjust to when I first got there, is understanding that and like kind of almost like swallowing my pride and understanding that it was going to take work because everyone at the college level is really good. So
What's the Ivy League like as a conference and just the competition you face each game from a lacrosse standpoint?
yeah, I think the Ivy League is a great conference, I would like to argue. I think that recently they haven't done as well as they have in the past. Like I know when I was getting, like I said, when I was getting recruited, there were several teams in the top 20. But each year I think we're getting closer to that again. I mean, last year there were some great teams as well, but I think there's individuals on each team that are just so talented. And I think each conference game is so challenging and difficult no matter where you stand in the rankings of the Ivy League. So the top number one team in the Ivy League could be playing the number 8 team in the Ivy League, and no matter what, like it's going to be a hard game, and it could be a 1 goal game. There could be upsets. I think every single time we played in Ivy League, we would never look at where they're ranked in comparison to us because we knew it was going to be a dogfight no matter what. I think that there's a lot of talent that's in these Ivy League conference teams.
And COVID kind of made things more challenging for those Ivy League teams because you don't get fifth year grad students, and you can't get transfers really. So they pretty much had to start from scratch again when COVID happened, where a lot of teams could use the advantage of the portal and stuff. So I feel like they're starting to figure it out and come back to where it was. But that was definitely a big reason why they might have struggled in the last few years.
Yep, definitely.
Now, obviously, you play a little bit in the ACC, I guess, in fall ball and practice. Is the style of play from the Ivy League different than the ACC from your perspective?
I would say it's a lot faster paced. Um I just think, yeah, it's really fast paced. And um a big difference between the two is that in not necessarily just the ACC, but the Ivy League in general, like the Ivy League is limited in hours, so you're not practicing as much, you're not conditioning as much, you're not lifting as much because you only get 8 hours. Whereas we can do 20 hours in where we've been doing 20 hours at Clemson. So we have the stick in our hands a lot more. We're running a lot more and stuff like that. So I think the pace of the game is a lot faster at the ACC level. But it's exciting. It's a challenge, but it's a good fast pace that I like.
No, this is kind of a basic question, but how did you balance both lacrosse and academics at such a high level?
Yeah, I think it had to do with just my discipline growing up at Ward Melville. I think that I was I played a sport pretty much every season in high school, so it was easier, I think, for me to transition in college and play a sport all year round because I was basically playing a different sport all year round in high school. So it wasn't that big of a difference. And I also think that the Ivy League provides a lot of resources to help you get acclimated, especially as a freshman. And I think that they're very good at helping you understand that academics do come first. So I was never super stressed out at Cornell when I first got there because I knew that I had the support system that I needed, and that the coaches 100% were behind academics come first. So if I had to go to certain things for my academics, they were 100% supporting me, and not really like they wouldn't hold it against me or anything like that.
Now, during your sophomore and junior year, the season was canceled due to the pandemic. I want to ask you how you handled that challenge of not playing games and with the uncertainty of when you were going to play again, and how do you think that's made you a better player now? Obviously, gave you the advantage because now you're playing with Clemson, so at least there was some positive in it, but it did suck as well. So,
Yeah, I definitely think it was a very challenging time, especially for everyone across all conferences. But I think the Ivy League was definitely special because we lost 2 seasons instead of just one. And I think it was hard mentally and physically. I mean, a lot of girls ended up taking a year off just because a lot of girls in the Ivy League because they wanted to preserve a year of eligibility. Um, but I think at the end of COVID, when we started having a season again, we knew that we were going to play again. One of the biggest things that my team did, at least, was trying to always remember like the feeling that we had when our season got canceled, our first season, and then the feeling we had when our second season got canceled, and always keeping that in the back of our minds, and like remembering the seniors that graduated without knowing it was going to be their last game, and all those feelings that we had, and kind of like always remembering that feeling and playing for them, playing for that feeling, and like just playing and enjoying every moment, because we try to always say like remember that like it can be taken away from you at any moment, and be grateful for like the ability to be playing lacrosse. So I think that gratefulness part of it really helped us in terms of bringing us back together and having fun with lacrosse. And I think like the best lacrosse it happens when you're having fun and playing loose. So I think that was the biggest takeaway that we got from it, is just like remembering how it felt, but also being grateful and using that gratefulness to play.
Now, what did you take away from your lacrosse experience with Cornell?
I think I took a lot away from Cornell, and I'm so grateful for my time there. And I learned lessons on and off the field. But I think above all else, like the relationships that I'll take away from that school is like the best thing that I could have asked for. Cornell has a very strong culture and a very strong history of tradition, and the relationships that I built from like year one to year four are ones that I know will last literally forever. And like not only the relationships of my teammates and my coaches, but also of their families. And I think Cornell is so great in making such a strong family come together. And I think above everything I could list that Cornell gave me, I think it would be those relationships that I'm really grateful for.
So we're now in a segment I like to call six questions that have nothing to do with sports. And the goal of the segment is to hopefully get to know you a little bit more off the field. And I can answer some of them as well if you need time to think of your answer. So
Okay.
the first one is, if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
I think Blake Lively, not because she looks anything like me, not at all. Like I know she doesn't, but I think she would be able to bring in the best revenue from both like men and women would want to watch her on a movie. So her.
Yeah. I always say the person I would pick to play me in a movie is Ryan Reynolds, and similar to
Oh.
you, obviously he doesn't look like me at all, but I just think he's a good dude and he's pretty funny. So maybe in your movie he can play me in the
Yes.
podcast scene, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Okay, perfect.
Now, what is the most, since Thanksgiving is coming up at the time of this recording, and it will also be Christmas season, I guess, when this comes out. So what's the most underrated holiday and what's the most overrated holiday in your opinion?
Overrated is definitely New Year's Eve. I just don't like that the holiday. Not that I don't like it, but it's just not my favorite. And underrated, I know it's not underrated. Like I know everyone loves Christmas, but like I am like obsessed with Christmas. Like
Yeah.
I'm so obsessed with it. So even though I know everyone loves it, I think it's still underrated. I think it's the best holiday ever.
I think Christmas Eve is underrated because everyone thinks about
Okay.
Christmas Day. But I say Christmas Eve is underrated because it's like just the excitement of Christmas and just all that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
especially as a
that's fair.
kid, that was always a good time. So that's always one of my favorite days of the year. I would say though, the worst part about Christmas is when you're driving back home from your Christmas celebration and it's like going to be the 26th soon because you just know
Yeah.
it's over. That's probably like one of the worst feelings ever as a kid.
No, that's fair. That's a good point.
I would say for me, most overrated though, I would probably go with probably Valentine's Day, just
Mhm.
because I think it's just a holiday for companies to make more money. It's not really, the intention isn't what it should be. So
Yeah.
that's probably what I would go with my
Yeah.
overrated. Now, what is the most interesting thing you've read or seen this week?
Oh, I'm gonna have to think because I haven't done a lot of reading this week.
I can give you my answer if you need to think
Okay.
about yours.
Yeah.
I think one was, I saw that this in North Carolina, there was this like field hockey coach that
Oh,
she used to
yes.
be a player, like, and then like a year later she became the head coach, and
Yeah.
she recently just won the national championship. And I thought that was a pretty cool story because you just never see a player like
Yeah.
immediately become a coach, especially a head coach of a big program like that. So I thought that was pretty cool, and she seems like a really nice person. And then the other thing I saw was I was just reading something about, I didn't know pop stars, this is gonna make me sound dumb, like they don't really write their own music. Like there's people that like write
Yeah.
music for them. And I didn't realize like there's this one guy from One Republic who I remember he was a pretty good he had some good songs, but he writes like a lot of pop songs, and it was cool seeing the stuff that he's written for other people along with like Bruno Mars and stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool seeing him write other music. So I thought those were the two interesting things I saw this week.
Yeah. No, I saw the field hockey thing. I'm gonna say that the Clemson lacrosse freshmen are ranked number 4 overall. That's gonna be mine.
Nice, nice. Anyone in particular we should look out for? Because I know there's the twin sisters that heard a
Mhm.
lot about. And then obviously Cameron Fudstein as well as someone that I've heard a lot about. But if there's anyone else, feel free to give them a shout out now.
I think they're all great. Natalie Shirtliff, Alex, Anna. I'm gonna shout them all out. Kayla. And now I don't know who I'm missing, but Jazzy. They're all great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, speaking of your team, and we'll do Cornell as well. Shannon, unbiased opinion, I think you might have the best off the field style in women's college lacrosse. But besides yourself, which player on the Clemson and Cornell women's lacrosse team has the best off the field style?
Okay, Clemson, I'm gonna go my roommate Ariana Klein. She's a grad transfer as well. And then for Cornell, it's gonna be a toss up between two seniors, Lexi Reinhart and Hillary Hoover.
All right. Now, if you could watch one movie for the rest of your life, which one would you be? Which one would you pick?
Remember the Titans. Easy.
Oh, mine's similar. It'll be Miracle. I love that
Yeah,
movie.
okay. I was thinking of
Yeah.
that one too, but Remember the Titans does it for me.
What is one item on your bucket list that you hope to accomplish one day?
I really want to travel to Asia.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Mine's similar travel, but like in North America, I've never really left like the eastern part of
Yeah,
this country. So I'd like to go to the West Coast and see what that's like. It seems like a lot of fun.
yeah, that's cool.
Now, getting back to some lacrosse questions now, what should be done to help grow women's lacrosse from your perspective?
Yeah, I think lacrosse is an inherently like wealthier sport. So I think something that I've always thought of is putting opportunities in front of underserved, under represented communities. That includes like the Black community, the Asian community. I think especially when I played for Team China, it was such a unique experience because I had little girls coming up to me and asking me to sign things, and it just made me feel like so great because I think it's important to have a role model that kind of looks like you playing the sport that you want to play, because it makes you think like, oh, I can do that too. So I think not only providing these opportunities, getting sticks in the hands of underserved communities, but also giving kind of a platform for people of different races, genders, ethnicities, and giving them a platform for other people to see them is going to be the best thing to make this sport grow and make it more diverse.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I think we need obviously more people of different ethnicities and minorities to play lacrosse. That definitely helps it grow because, like you mentioned, and I remember talking to a player from Vermont, and she said her favorite player growing up was Marie McCool, and a big reason why was because she looked like her, and it
Mm-hmm.
had a huge impact on her growing up. So just something like that, I think, can go a long way, and I think a lot of people don't really like realize that.
Yep, definitely.
Well, Shannon, before we let you go, do you have any shout outs you want to give to your family members, teammates, former teammates, friends? Feel free to let me know. And then who should we have on the podcast next?
Okay. Well, I mean, I would like to shout out all of them, all of those you just listed. But who to have next? I would say Hillary Hoover, who I mentioned has great style. I think she's a captain at Cornell right now, and she's just like such a fierce competitor, but also um she suffered an injury last year as well. So I think she's come back and she's stronger than ever. But I think she has some great insights and would be able to provide some great conversation and insight. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Shannon, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. I think you're a great player, but an even better person. So I just want to let you know that. And super excited to see what your team accomplishes next year. And I wish you and your team nothing but the best regarding that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I am so thankful that you had me come on here.